what I found is that for the people who embrace this idea, it's good news to them, because they had told themselves a story that they had to do something of success in one phase of their life and then significance in a later phase. And so the idea, kind of the awareness that no, you can do something that's both oriented around success and significance simultaneously is great news. For CEOs, and then where we focus for marketing leaders, the idea that marketing can change the world, that through the practice of business today you can do something that both produces money, profit, and is meaningful and beneficial to the world, it's great news. It's a voice of optimism and excitement that they can integrate that into their business practice today. I found it to be incredibly frightening to go down this path. In my head, everything's kind of nice and neat and orderly. In my heart, I wasn't used to that vocabulary. That space of heart's not one that came naturally to me. So entering that space was and continues to be frightening. It's as if I live in a 5,000 square foot house with 2,000 feet roped off with caution tape. And I've been working to take off the caution tape and enter that space. So it's god-awful frightening, no doubt about it. There's a book, Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book, What Got Me Here, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And that's a hard wake-up call for leaders to realize, because their success formula got them to the point of leadership. It got them to the point of being at the CEO's desk or being in the C-suite or wherever they are. It got them to that point. And often leaders hold on to that success formula with all of their might because that's what got them there. But that very same success formula is actually what will stand in the way of making the next move. And I just had a sense that that was the case for me. That what had got me to that point of leadership, the intellectual ability to piece together models and ideas, was just the thing that was standing in my way. So, for people who watch the program, they may also just have a gut sense. Likely they have a lot of courage, tenacity, and to point that at something that's so incredibly challenging, of what's that heart space that's not yet exposed, and how do I have comfort going to my leadership team and saying, I don't know. Going to my customers or my investors and saying, I'm not sure what the answer is. Let's figure it out together. God, that's got to be nerve-wracking for lots of leaders. Right? And for me, that I've worked to translate that to the practice of marketing, going to customers not with we know everything, we know more than you, so we're going to persuade you to buy from us, but rather we know who we are, we know what we believe, and we're imperfect. Join us in a path, join us in a movement. We'll figure it out together. That's been a difficult and rewarding path that I'm still on. Yeah, courage, right? Courage, the word courage comes from the word heart. Right? Courage connects back to core in French and Latin. The root of courage has to do with heart. And so courage has to do with not one can experience fear and still be courageous. Courage is experiencing fear and overcoming that fear. So for a leader to sense fear, that's okay, but what do you do with it? And in fact, the most courageous leaders get comfortable with the experience of fear and working past it. I mentioned an evolutionary model for marketing, but you could look at evolutionary models for individuals or for groups of people, and I feel like people are on a path. And the only way to connect is meet people where they are. So there are many people who don't share these values. I'm in business, in a professional service business where I'm dealing with Fortune 500 companies or large mid-market companies and CEOs who are often very transactional, and they look at others as from a transactional lens. How do I get the most out of my employees? Not how do I create the most beneficial relationship where I get the most and they get the most. It's a very either-or mentality. Particularly, they look at me as a supplier often and think, how do I get the most out of them? How do I pay them the least and extract value? So I'm used to dealing with people who don't share my values. But I tend to go to the place of meet them where they are. So that's that CEO who's thinking about how do I extract the most value from everyone around me in order to get the furthest for my shareholders and for me economically. You can enter into a space and say, let's look at some of the companies that are the most successful. Let's look at some of those leaders who've done things that are really distinct. And I can point to companies like that others point to, companies like Apple or Starbucks or Southwest Airlines or Whole Foods. Whole Foods has had annual comp store sales growth, a particularly important metric for a retail business, annual comp store sales growth of 8% for 30 years. It's crazy. You look at Southwest Airlines, they've, in an industry where other airlines are declaring bankruptcy, they've made money quarter after quarter. And you can ask yourselves, when you look at those companies, do they care about making money? And the answer is, of course they do. Does Apple care about making money, or Southwest Airlines, Whole Foods? They care deeply about making money. And do they care about something more? And that's something you don't really have a tangible answer to. You've got to go to a felt space. Does Apple care about something? Does Apple care about something more than making money? Does Whole Foods? Does Starbucks? My sense is that they do. That Whole Foods cares about organic food. They care about healthy eating. They care about health and well-being, and they care about making money. That Southwest Airlines was founded because of a care for giving people the freedom to fly. It was baked into their DNA from the get-go by people like Herb Kelleher and Colleen Barrett, who was there at the very beginning. Do they care about making money? Sure. Do they care about something more than making money? I think they do. And you can look at other companies that aren't as successful and note that they just care about making money. It's the paradox. The companies that care about something more than making money make more money. One of our clients is Procter & Gamble, and we work with the Secret brand, underarm deodorant. And there are people who are part of the Secret brand who believe that Secret is about something bigger than underarm deodorant, but we worked with them to help clarify what that was. What they came to is that Secret was about helping women be fearless. And so then our marketing became about not just a superior underarm deodorant product, as most marketing typically would be, what they do, but why they do it. And we could face a new marketing challenge with that clarity of what it is that they stand for. When we first reached that clarity with Secret, it was around the time of the last Winter Olympics. And there was an Olympian, a woman named, not an Olympian, an athlete named Lindsey Vann, who was the best in her sport of ski jump, but wasn't allowed to compete in the Winter Olympics because women's ski jump isn't an Olympic sport. And so we created a petition drive called Let Her Jump, and invited girls and women to sign on with Secret and sign a petition to make women's ski jump an Olympic sport. Now, previous to this, only 5,000 people had connected with the brand via social media, via Facebook specifically. But the petition drive brought 700,000 girls and women to watch a video and sign a petition to let her jump. And then what happened? 3 things. One, 700,000 women, girls and women, signed the petition to let her jump. Second, sales went through the roof. They had a 20% growth of sales in their clinical category during this campaign. And then third, the IOC decided to make women's ski jump an Olympic sport. So women's ski jump will be in the 2014 Games. What we found is that this clarity of why is rocket fuel for solving garden variety business challenges. Now when we started the relationship with Secret, there were 5,000 people connected with Secret online. Now there are 1.7 million. Secret's seen their market share grow. In an environment where they've been outspent by their competitors, their market share has grown 8 points. And so, they're making a difference in the lives of girls and women. They're helping women like Diana Nyad be fearless. They're helping Lindsay Vann. They're helping empower women to make a difference. And they're seeing their sales grow. So these are some examples. When we did this work with Secret, it was in the environment of, frankly, a company that expressed a care for thinking about purpose, but also had lots of obstacles in the way. Kind of a process and an orientation that took them down the path of talking exclusively about product benefit, not what's behind the product benefit. So we go about this work of helping companies kind of peel back the layers of why they do what they do and stand for that. And time and again we see that that's rocket fuel for a company's revenue growth, that helps create authentic relationships that in turn lead to greater revenue and profit. But getting there is not easy because it really involves a mindset shift about business and marketing, one that is in the head and the heart. And only some leaders are ready to go there. These terms that we know, relationship, trust, and loyalty, have been misused in marketing to mean something we know that they're not. And when leaders come into conversation and represent what we know those words and concepts to mean, trust, authenticity, relationship, loyalty, they're often scoffed at, laughed at, discarded. And so it takes a tremendous amount of courage for a business leader to come in at a CEO level or at any level and talk about the inclusion of real trust and authenticity. It takes courage to do that, because in the typical business environment, people who talk about that are derided as soft. There's frankly a male-female paradigm that goes on there too. Men who come in and talk about these things are treated as wimpy. Women who come in and talk about these things are derided as not yet ready for the man's world of business. So for both men and women, I think there's a natural tendency to avoid a wholehearted approach to business. And the courageous prevail. But I've found with the companies that we work with is when they get clear on what they authentically believe, it is a magnet for people who are like-minded. But it's also a repellent for people who aren't. And in the absence of clarity of what it is that you stand for, there's room for lots of different interpretations. When you get crystal clear on what it is that you believe, while you attract people who really connect with that, you also notice people glow in the dark when they're not a fit with that, even more clearly than they would have before. Just expedites a process that may have naturally occurred. But that can be painful, right? Painful in the transition. What I've found is because I was talking so much about advancing relationships, about the relationship era, that there have been people around me who don't fit with that and move away. There have been people who fit with it very well who I embrace and who fit. But there's a third category of people who talk as if they embrace it. They talk the game, but they don't really authentically connect with it or believe it. And that's been the most challenging group of all, because the optimist in me wants to embrace and believe that they do, but the realist in me needs to acknowledge when the talk doesn't match the action. And though they may want to be part of what it is that we're here doing, they're not. And so, yeah, I've had people who have gotten closer, I've had people who move away, and then I've had people who I've had to acknowledge need to move away. And that's been the most painful group of all. My sense, and maybe I'll watch this video several years down the line and know it to be true or false with some tangible evidence, but my sense is that I'm skating to where the puck will be. There are a lot of people who make a ton of money and aren't fulfilled or happy. There are a lot of people who are fulfilled and happy and don't make much money. I'm working to create the integration of those two. Not because making money is the end in itself, but I do believe that making money in a company is, first at a very core level, it's a demonstration that you're doing something of value, right? In an economic model, when customers are buying from you, that demonstrates that you're creating something of value. And in a broader sense, when a company's making money, that creates the fuel to impact people's lives, to impact the lives of employees and suppliers and customers and communities. So making money is an important means to an end. But my intent is to be at the integration of those two. Still working on getting there. You remember the Beatles song, Can't Buy Me Love? My co-author and I titled our book, Can't Buy Me Like. In today's era of social media and inundation of marketing messages, you can't just purchase affection, right? It comes from a deeper place. So what we realize is that, yes, for marketers, for business leaders, they can't just do things the old way. They can't just put out a message in order to persuade. That connection requires a whole different way of thinking about what it is that they do. And when we look at the most successful business and marketers, they've adopted that mindset. But yes, getting there is a huge challenge. So, I'll tell you the good news in this is that you can look at the companies that are the furthest forward in this path of marketing, and they actually spend less money on marketing. So the opportunity, because the vast majority of money that's spent on marketing is on paid media, right? And when you have the depth of relationship with people, particularly in an era of social media where people have a megaphone with which to shout their love or their hatred, when you have more customers that love you, those customers are able to pull in others. And so the job of the marketer is less about how do we take the people in the middle and move them to love, but rather how do we take the people who love us and help them pull others into that space. One of the questions that we ask when we help companies get clear on what they believe is, what would the world lose if you disappear? And what I found often is, if you ask companies, what do you do well? What makes you different from the competition? They can answer those questions pretty readily. When you say, what would the world lose if you disappear? That's a much harder question for them to answer. Which means that may be just the question that you need to answer. What would the world lose if you disappear? So that question of indispensability, I think, is a great one for people to consider. And a great, very, I think, accessible starting point as you go down this path. What would the world lose if my company weren't here? What would the world lose if I as a leader, weren't here? And, from that place you get to some core truths. You're probably familiar with the company, The Container Store. The Container Store has a saying that one great person equals 3 good people. And we've certainly found that to be true here. That when you get those people who are absolutely incredible, they just add value in a way that's significantly greater than even people who are pretty darn good. So what I found is the exceptional people here embody advancing relationships, what it is that we stand for. They wake up every day thinking about, how do I serve? How do I serve my colleagues? How do I serve my clients? How do I help my clients serve their customers? How do I help them connect in an authentic way? They come in with a level of this kind of paradoxical mix of confidence and humility. Use your brain and your heart. Use your brain and your heart. So much of what is learned in typical in academics today is around the head, and embrace it. There's so much value there. Being able to discern patterns, question things, create. So embrace it, but know that the answer's not entirely there. Yeah, you gotta delve into the heart space. You get to delve into the heart space in order to get to those true breakthroughs that change things. So one thing that I think people could do is get into a practice of gratitude, be it writing a thank you note once a day, or 3 thank you emails, or sitting down with somebody once a week in order to express gratitude. As a leader, we can bring about that culture of gratitude, which in itself is a spiritual practice. It's a wholehearted practice to be grateful. Know why you're here, what you're here to do, and express it when necessary. There's a quote I love. Saint Francis of Assisi said, "Always preach the gospel and use words when necessary." So live it. Live it. Doesn't mean you need to talk about it. Talk about it when it's helpful or appropriate, but know why you're here and live it every day.